So just to introduce ourselves, we are with Volunteer West Virginia. My name is Dana Bryant. I'm the Outreach Officer, and I'm joined by Christina Cochran. She's our AmeriCorps Training Officer. You can see her waving in the camera, and we are both AmeriCorps alums. So you can see our pictures here on the right-hand side, and we were AmeriCorps members, and that's how we moved to West Virginia and how we stayed here. So that's just a little bit about our background. If you'd like, you can introduce yourself in the chat box. I see lots of new names and faces. So if you want to take a second, you can just put your name, your organization, and where you're from. And it'll be a good informal networking opportunity for you all to see who else is here as we move through these introduction slides. So here's just a little bit of news, and you all can listen in the background as you introduce yourselves. We are really excited. We're working on a new volunteer opportunity database on our website. I know that sounds a little bit clunky, but the bottom line is it's going to be a really easy way for everyone to share their volunteer opportunities in the state. We want to make it so easy that you can post it in less than 5 minutes. So we're going to be launching that in the summer. So stay tuned for that, and we would love your help posting your volunteer opportunities. And then later this year, we're going to do a big television and radio campaign to help you all get your volunteer opportunities out into the public. So if this is your first Volunteer West Virginia Wednesday, it's just a really fun, informal networking and training series that we do every second Wednesday of the month. We explain our programs here at Volunteer West Virginia, we network, and then mostly we have fun. So it's just a great time, and we're happy to see so many people joined us today. So we have lots of really cool upcoming topics. In June, and on our West Virginia Day, we're doing a webinar on the history and culture of West Virginia. You're really not going to want to miss this. We have a guest presenter for that. It's going to be Dr. Hal Gorby from WVU, and he's putting together a really positive and uplifting presentation about West Virginia culture. So this would be great for your staff, your volunteers. Please join in and help us celebrate the birthday of West Virginia a little bit early. And then we have webinars throughout the year. We're going to be doing using data to share your impact in July. That's going to be a really wonderful website with another outside presenter. In August, we'll have fun with summer networking. And then we have 2 more that aren't listed. We're going to do National Preparedness Month in September. And then in October, I believe, we're doing grant writing. And you're not going to want to miss that. It's going to be a 2-hour special session. So if these have caught your ears, you can register on our website for all the upcoming Volunteer West Virginia Wednesdays. So today's topic is all about fundraising, and we're going to make fundraising fun for you all because I know it's a big part of our jobs at nonprofits. And what we're going to do is we're going to do 5 fundraising tips that work, that we really like. We're going to share those with you. And then we have a really great crew of West Virginia nonprofit leaders that are joining us today that are going to talk about some strategies that they use at their nonprofits to raise money. So that'll be a really great conversation the second half of the webinar. And then we're just going to close out with some questions and answers. So if you have any questions, save them for the end and we'll answer them then. So now we're going to jump right into it. We're going to do 5 fundraising tips that we love and that work. And the great news is a lot of these tips are free, so you're not going to want to miss them. So let's roll right into them, Christina.
I am going to share our first fundraising tip, which is a t-shirt fundraiser through Bonfire. Now, I recently did one of these Bonfire t-shirt fundraisers with the Summers County Humane Society, which is a nonprofit that I volunteer with and sit on the board of directors for. It was amazingly successful. The number one thing that most people hate about t-shirts is you get stuck with all kinds of t-shirts after your event. After the fact, it's always the extra, extra smalls or the extra, extra larges, and you have tons of t-shirts left over that you don't know what to do with. These Bonfire t-shirt fundraisers eliminate inventory, which is incredible. And they also help with design. So when I first reached out to the folks at Bonfire, I gave them an idea of what we were looking for, which for us was a dog in the Greenbrier River to show how beautiful Summers County is and get the word out about our organization. And they worked with us back and forth to create a design, which, by the way, was free. They provided their graphic design services for free. And then we were able to select up to 5 different styles of t-shirts. So we offered a tank top, we offered a raglan, like 3/4 length sleeve, a regular t-shirt, and a crew neck sweatshirt. And all we had to do was drive people to this special link that they gave us. People ordered their t-shirt directly through the website and it was shipped direct to them. So we didn't have to deal with boxes and boxes of t-shirts. We did not have to deal with extra sizes, and we didn't even have to deal with money. So we set a date that the fundraiser would close, and after that date, we were able to cash out our account with Bonfire. We ended up raising about, I think it was close to $3,000 for a 60-day t-shirt fundraiser, again, where we didn't have to put any type of investment into it at all. So this is a great thing to try if you're looking for an easy fundraiser. And chime in the chat box if your organization has ever hosted a t-shirt fundraiser in the past. It may be a horror story from a t-shirt fundraiser that you've done where you've had a ton of leftover t-shirts. And then we'll move on to our second tip. I'll pass it back to Dana.
So this is one of my favorite tips. I don't know about you all, but I love Canva. I use it all the time. If you haven't heard of it, it's a free website where you can do graphic designing, and it makes it really fun and easy. So you can design a poster all the way down to a social media post. And what's really wonderful about Canva is that it's free for nonprofits. So if you all are a nonprofit on this call, you would be eligible to receive a free Canva account. And that means you would have an upgraded Teams account where you could work with all the members of your staff, and you can put your branding guide in there so you can use your colors and graphics. And we have a few examples on the next slides of how this would be applicable for a fundraiser. So when I look at these pictures, I instantly want to eat a bag of cookies and donuts. It makes it look like so much fun. And really a big part of fundraising is making your event look fun, easy, and accessible. So that's a great way to do it is with Canva, and all these templates are on there. So all you have to do is fill in your information and they'll provide the graphics. And we have some really great conversations in the chat box. Courtney loves Canva, and I would be curious to hear if anyone else uses Canva in the audience. And I think we have one more slide of examples that I really liked. This was really cute. It was a breakfast party for an orphanage. See how easy that is. You could post this at all the local businesses, at the library, schools in your town. And then the other one on the left is Slippers for a Cause, which is really cute. I think when you're fundraising, it's really wonderful to have a clear goal and target. So if you're fundraising for slippers, it makes it so easy. Like, of course, I would donate my slippers to help your organization. So there are some really great comments in the chat box about Canva. I see Margaret Ann from the United Way says she uses it all the time. So if you haven't tried it yet, maybe consider signing up and getting a free account for your nonprofit.
All right, our third tip is to utilize Amazon Smile. So first off, hopefully your organization is registered as a charity through Amazon on Amazon Smile, because shoppers, including your staff, your volunteers, anyone that you can get to support you, can get your organization up to 0.5% of cash back to come as donations to your organization. So we do have some instructions on this next slide that tell you how to sign your organization up if you are not currently registered as an Amazon Smile charity. I do want to point out that it's a pretty recent update that you can now use Amazon Smile through the Amazon app. Previously, you had to go through a special smile.amazon web-based link. I don't know about you guys. I use apps for almost everything these days. And so because I was being lazy, some of my charities were missing out on some of those donations. But now if you go through your Amazon app and sign up through Smile in the app, you can make sure that all purchases being made count towards your organization. This is a great thing to bring up maybe at your next board meeting to make sure all of your board members are registered to contribute to your organization. Do it right there in the moment. It'll take 5 minutes. It'll get people to do it so that they don't forget to do it later. You could also do it at a volunteer meeting. Yeah, we love Amazon Smile. People are going to be buying things. They might as well be contributing a little bit back to your organization. And we wanted to ask if you are familiar with any other give back corporate giving programs like Amazon Smile. And if you are aware, please drop them in the chat box so we can make sure that everyone is taking advantage of those programs. I know, okay, Kroger, I see in the chat box, people are saying Kroger has community rewards. That's awesome. iGive, I've never heard of iGive, but maybe Amy can give us some more context. H&R Block has a similar program. Yes, awesome. So making sure that we're enrolled with Amazon Smile and the Kroger community rewards and that all of your normal volunteers are enrolled is an easy way to make sure you're maximizing your fundraising.
Yes, that's such a great point, Christina. And I looked into it. I forget the exact statistic, but it is about 80% of volunteers donate to their nonprofit that they serve for. So if you just sign up your volunteers for Amazon Smile and the Kroger Rewards, you would make a pretty good dent in that. So here's our fourth idea. This is so much fun. It is a cutest pet contest. Christina's going to talk about this. She's actually tried it and it worked, and it helped her organization raise, I want to say $1,200 if I'm right. So the way this works is you register your pet, and when people vote, they can donate $1 or $2, and then whoever receives the most votes is the winner. And Christina has a really great website that she used for this. It's linked in the bottom of the slide, and it set up the whole thing for her. She'll talk a little bit more about this, and we're going to send out all these slides at the end of today's webinar, so you'll be able to click that link and check out how it worked exactly. But it's a really easy way to raise money for your nonprofit. I love the idea of doing a contest like the cutest pet in Fairmont or the cutest pet in Wheeling. And I think it would take off like wildfire because everyone loves looking at pets. You can do it online, like the website I was telling you about, or if you have a community hub, like your library or maybe your city building, you can put all the pictures out and then make little buckets where people can donate $1. So a fun way to raise money, and who doesn't love pets? Yes, Katie had a great recommendation to have the buckets at a holiday light display, or that might be different altogether. But there's all different ways to get your community rallied around this. Would you participate in a cutest pet contest? I know I would, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later in the webinar.
Our last simple tip to share with you guys before we move into our guest speakers is to host a Meet the Candidates event. I'll talk a little bit more specifically about how my organization did this, but with our elections happening in November, most of us know who won the primaries yesterday in our counties and who will be moving forward to elections in November. The summer is the perfect time to get a jump start on planning an event like this. I know a lot of times people that work with nonprofits think, oh, politics, we want to stay away. But a Meet the Candidates event is a completely nonpartisan forum for folks that are running for public office in your community to come out, meet and greet with the community. Sometimes chambers of commerce will do this in bigger communities, but in smaller communities, nobody is doing this. And people in your area don't have a chance to meet and greet with people and hear about where they stand on the issues. It's also a great opportunity for your nonprofit to advocate for your cause and your mission with your local representatives. So the way that we formatted our event was we invited everyone that was running for office to come and participate and give a little spiel about their platform and why they were running for the position they were running for. And we asked for a small donation to our organization in order to participate. And while this was going on, we had a silent auction and a bake sale going on. And both of those events were very successful because people came out to hear from the candidates. And while they were there, they took home a pie. So it worked out really well for us. We made several $1,000s, and again, no investment. I think we maybe had to pay $100 to utilize a community building to host the event, but everything else we were able to source from volunteers.
So next up, we have a group of all-stars that are going to be talking about successful ways they've been fundraising across West Virginia. So we're really lucky to have leaders from several organizations throughout the state who have hosted really successful fundraising events that are sharing their time to give you some tips. We're going to hear from Brett and Margaret Ann from the United Ways, and we're also going to hear from Brittany Lawson from the West Virginia Autism Training Center. And then Christina is like such a good fundraiser. She's going to be sharing some more on her tips. She is a dedicated volunteer superstar at the Summers County Humane Society. So this is going to be a great opportunity to network and hear what other nonprofits are doing in the state and what has worked well for them. So first up, I'm really happy to introduce Whitney Lawson from the West Virginia Autism Training Center. We are so lucky to have her today, and she's going to be talking about a special event she plans and how she fundraises at the training center. So hi, Whitney, it's so good to see you.
Hey, thanks for having me today. All right, so this is going to be like my first event, doing anything like this. So forgive me if I'm a little nervous. Okay, so this is going to be, I'm the first time being the event coordinator for the Ruth Sullivan Rally for Autism. This has been going on for about 21 years now. We didn't get to have it for the last 2 years because of COVID. So this is kind of like our catching up year. It has been very successful over the years. This year, like I said, we weren't as successful as we had been in previous years, but I think we did really, really well. The one thing that I want to go over first, we have a video here, and I think that if we watch the video first, I think that it'll kind of explain and put everything in perspective for you about why we call it the Ruth Sullivan Rally for Autism. So Ruth Sullivan, she's the lady in the picture. She is kind of the person that got Autism Services Center, Autism Training Center at Marshall University started. And, she passed away in September of last year, and she was featured on the Today Show. And there's this little video snippet, if we can play that, and I think it'll just explain everything better.
This week, we highlight another life well lived. In 1963, a young boy named Joseph Sullivan was diagnosed with autism. Doctors told his parents there wasn't much that could be done for him. Joseph's mother spent the rest of her life changing that. After her son's diagnosis, Ruth Sullivan was told Joseph just would be a little odd, or believe it or not, that her cold mothering may have caused his condition. With 6 other happy, healthy children, Ruth knew that wasn't true, so she went to work.
Joseph is in the middle of a large, articulate, normal, outgoing family. I know that I didn't treat him so badly that he is going to be maimed for the rest of his life.
In 1965, she co-founded the Autism Society of America and became its first elected president. Ruth relentlessly lobbied local officials and members of Congress to make schools open and accessible to children with disabilities, including autism. Her advocacy helped to win passage of the 1975 federal law that became known as the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. The oldest of 7 children herself, and a former United States Army nurse during World War II, who earned 2 degrees from Columbia University on the GI Bill, Ruth in 1979 opened the Autism Services Center out of her Huntington, West Virginia home. She fielded calls in her dining room from families across the country looking for help that was unavailable at the time almost anywhere else. She later opened group homes for adults with autism and the West Virginia Autism Training Center at Marshall University, where Joseph works today. Ruth and Joseph were advisors to Dustin Hoffman for his Oscar-winning performance in the movie Rain Man. Hoffman thanked both of them in his speech at the Academy Awards. Ruth Sullivan, a tenacious mother and a crusader for people with autism, died this month in Huntington, West Virginia. She was 97 years old.
Yeah, so I really love that. I think that really puts everything in perspective. Like, I think that's a really great, captured story of Ruth's life in 2.5 minutes. But, everything that was said about Ruth in that is really good. It's really true. She is a pioneer. She really put a stamp on the autism world. She did so much for us. And so we renamed, it used to just be the Rally for Autism, and we renamed it the Ruth Sullivan Rally for Autism a few years ago. So the 3 agencies make up the Rally for Autism. So any proceeds go between those 3 agencies. So it used to be the 5K walk, run, and bike. But there just wasn't enough interest in the bike ride, so we just cut that down to the walk and run. Now, if we go to the next slide, it has a few statistics.
This week, we highlight another
from this year. So these pictures were from this year's rally. We always have it in April because it's Autism Awareness Month. This year, it's usually the last Saturday. We had it on April 30th this year. It usually rains. So I would say 9 times out of 10, this is my 10th year doing the Rally for Autism. And I've always been a volunteer, but like I said, this is my first year as the event coordinator. This year we had 396 people that were registered. We had about 25 different volunteers this year, and I counted up that we had 18 different sponsors. In comparison to previous years, we've had usually about 700 to 1,000 people registered. But I think, compared to not having it for the last 2 years, I think that was really good. And the torrential pouring. We had Star Wars characters come out. They volunteered. We had the awareness truck come out, and people were able to take pictures with that. We always have prizes that Aaron's donates. So I think that's one of the really successful things. People like to compete for prizes. Whoever raises most money, there's always 2 prizes, and they're usually pretty highly valued prizes. Like this year, the first place prize was like some high-tech scooter that was valued at like $600. And so whoever raised the most money won that. And then the second place was wireless Beats earphones. So Aaron's always donates those every year. And then we give trophies out for the largest teams. People really love the teams. So the largest teams and the team that raises the most money, they get trophies. So, and it's a competitive 5K. Obviously don't have to compete, but we do give awards out for that. the people down here in the left-hand corner, they are the ones that raised the most money. He was super ecstatic to win the scooter. It's just great seeing, how excited everyone was. And like I said, I've been doing it for 10 years and seeing the same people every year. It's kind of just like almost like a family event, like a reunion, seeing the same people. Of course, there are things that have not worked over the years. It's always a learning curve. I think one of the things that I don't think really works very well, I mean, it does for certain things. One of the things would be, we used to have a breakfast before the rally, like a couple weeks before, but it was really far away from Huntington. So we would only have limited amounts of food. And as you know, people on the spectrum can be very picky about the foods that they like. So they only have breakfast foods available. And it's very secluded, so not a lot of people can get there. So it would always be the same people every year that could come. So it would only be, maybe 20 people that were able to show up. So I think if we would just broaden, where we were at and change the location and maybe the food selections, there's room for growth there. But I think that there's just different opportunities available. But we have a lot of different ideas this year. But I really liked the ideas that you guys gave out today. Those are really good ones to bring back to the committee this year. But if anyone, has any ideas that they want to reach out to me about, I did my information on the bottom. That's my personal email and my personal number. So I really appreciate you guys letting me be on here today.
Thanks, Whitney. That was such a beautiful presentation. And I know some people commented in the chat, we love how everyone's smiling, even though it's raining.
I know.
That's a huge feat. And It's amazing. It's been occurring for 10 years. How much do you typically raise each year with your fundraiser?
So in previous years, like 5 years ago, we raised over $100,000. This year we raised, I'd say, about $20,000. That was, of course, before any expenses. But yeah, with our sponsors, our donations, everything like that. And $20,000, it was awesome. Because I was really afraid that it wasn't going to turn out that way. There were a lot of hiccups this year. We had some branding issues. I didn't get hired in until the end of October. There was a lot of issues, so I was a little nervous. But yeah, it went really great. There was not a lot of people signed up at first, but in the last month and a half, everyone kind of just rallied together, and they really showed up for everything. So I really appreciated everyone's support. And we didn't have a whole lot of volunteers this year, but it really worked out. It seemed like the less volunteers we had, it really worked out better the morning of. There wasn't too many volunteers on top of each other, so it worked out better that way.
Yeah, it's remarkable that you could organize a fundraiser, a rally with 25 volunteers. I mean, that's a pretty big feat.
We barely actually had enough to do the police presence, because we had to order the police presence and pay for the police presence to do the 5K, and there's 13 that are required on the route, and we didn't have enough of those people show up. Luckily my whole family was there, because they were most of the volunteers, so we had to make them go. They had their own jobs, like we had a sales table and stuff like that, so we had to take people off those tables and send them out. It was a little concerning at first, but it all worked out. So
wow. Yeah, you touched on a good lesson. If you're planning a fundraiser, you just got to be flexible and recruit your family, because they'll help you out.
I recruited all of them.
Oh my gosh, I believe it. So if you had just one last question, if you had one tip for if there was an organization on the call that was interested in planning a rally, do you have one tip that you would give them?
Plan early, start planning early. If if you're going to get sponsors, start planning early. Their fiscal year, they start giving out money way early. So that was kind of our issue, is that we didn't start asking people early enough. And you really want people to help out. It was just me and one other person that were looking for sponsorships, and it just wasn't enough for this kind of a big event. We just needed more help. We just need more volunteers. So that would be my suggestion.
That's a great tip. Start early and get volunteers to help. And Whitney, that
Yes.
is a huge
Thank you, Jess.
accomplishment.
By the way.
Oh, that's cool. You had a volunteer here in the webinar. That's awesome.
Yes, yes. I thought that was you when I saw your name.
Such a small world. Well, Whitney, it was so great meeting you, and this is a wonderful event. And thank you so much for planning it. And we really appreciate you sharing your time today.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.
Welcome. So next up, we have two wonderful people. I just love them so much. We have Margaret Ann O'Neill. She's the president and CPO from the United Way of Central West Virginia, located in Charleston. She taught me a lot of what I know about fundraising. And we also have Brett White. He is so wonderful. I always enjoy my time with him, and he is the Chief Executive Officer at the Tigard Valley United Way. So Brett and Margaret, thanks so much for being here today.
Thanks for having us, Dana. We're excited to be here. I can only hope to be as eloquent as Whitney was. We're a little bit crazy at the United Way. So I do have a couple of tips of my own, and Brett and I have talked about this, so it's really our tips. And one thing Whitney said just reminded me that it's a good tip. So the first one is make a budget. We just finished a pretty significant, what we are calling our fundraising event of all of our fundraising events, our signature event. And it was super important. This was the first year that we had a budget, and what we thought was a really conservative budget. And so we are going to end up raising more than what we projected, but I'd rather be on that side of it than the other side. So I'd really encourage you, whether it's, from the smallest to the largest event, that you try to map out a budget of what your expenses are going to be. And then number two is only count the net. So when Whitney mentions how much you raise, I think it's a little bit of a challenge for nonprofits when we stand on a stage or we stand up anywhere and say, we raised this amount today, tonight, over this, event, however long it was. And then by the time you subtract your expenses, that amount is much smaller, and then people wonder why you didn't do as much as you could have when you said you raised this amount. So we're really, really careful at United Ways to only count the net of any event that we have. And I think that's good practice for all of us, so that we don't find ourselves in a pickle and having to explain why we made a comment and then we ended up not being able to account for all of those dollars. Number three is make it fun. We try to make it fun for our staff. We have a rubber duck race coming up in September, and some of our stuff came today, and then that were duck quackers necklace. So if any of you guys need a duck quacker on a necklace, I can make that happen for you. But we went around the office, irritating everybody and quacking like ducks. So super fun, but makes everybody think about the next event, and we can hand those out to volunteers and make it fun for your volunteers. It took a lot of people to help us pull off the event a couple Fridays ago, and it was people that were typically donors to our organization, but hadn't really been involved in a volunteer boots on the ground level. And I think we just, and I know we did, because we heard back from them a couple of times. We had no idea how much you guys do. And so when they're spending time in your office working on your fundraiser, they're also hearing you help people find shelter for pets, find people solutions for autism, whatever your organization does. When they're in there stuffing envelopes, or they're in here, putting faces on a stick, they're also hearing a lot about our work and our mission and our message. So don't forget who's in your building, and make it fun for your guests and volunteers. And then Brett, obviously, is true story, but good customer relationship management tool was awesome. And if you want to talk about that, some yours is far better than mine.
Well, and certainly this is just something for everybody to think about. One of the things I hear very often from nonprofits is, they forget who attended events, or they forget who was there, and then they can't invite them again. And so whatever means you can use to, whether it be Excel, whether it be a good CRM, product, whether it be, you know, donor tracker or whatever you want to use, it's always great to make sure you're tracking who's coming to your events so that you can invite them again next year. And when you hopefully can turn them into long-term supporters of your organization. And so even if it is just tracking their name and their email address on a clipboard, you know, even if it's as simple as that, it's making sure that you're tracking them somehow, because several times over the years, I've heard somebody say, oh, I didn't know about that event. And it was because we maybe didn't have them tracked. And so they didn't get the notification, or they didn't receive the email invite. And so that's a really important one, is because once you have those people who support your organization and support your fundraisers, hopefully they're long-term and they're going to want to come back again, and that'll hopefully branch out and you'll be inviting other folks and bringing them along with you.
And if you use any kind of regular communication tool, like if you're doing a constant contact or a monthly, quarterly newsletter, you just want to try to get all those people on to those regular things where they're going to hear about your organization. So maybe they came to Dancing with the Stars, but they see in our constant contact that we got ducks coming up, and they're like, oh yeah, they do good work, we'll buy a $5 duck. And so as you continue to add those people, you just expand your donor base or your contact base.
Yep.
Oops, sorry.
Okay, great. Christina, I think we can hop to the next one
There
there.
you
Yeah.
go.
And so this is really exciting. And this is an example of a really fun event that we both get to do. And so even though we are in 2 different locations in the state, both of us have Dancing with the Stars events. And they're really fantastic for our community. And so what we love about our Dancing with the Stars events is, one, it's a really fun night to bring out your community. Number one, people get to dress up. It feels formal and fun and fancy. It brings a little bit of like the Hollywood glamour, of course, to your community. And so that's really neat. I actually got to attend Margaret's just last week. And so it's just so fun to be out with your community and supporting the hardworking couples, because that's the other piece is, you know, with this Dancing with the Stars, we, you know, put the pressure on these couples to go out and do the dancing and the fundraising and things. And they do phenomenal work for us on behalf of our agencies to go out and do that. And then this is their night to shine. So they get to bring out their supporters, their friends. And it's just a really great way to make glamour and glitz and support a good cause. That's the other piece. And what I also love is that you can see, I mean, we're in the same state, but we're in 2 different areas. And so this event works for both of us. The United Way of Southern West Virginia also has Dancing with the Stars. So there's actually 3 of them. And Margaret started it in Southern, and now she brought it to Charleston, and we copied it in Fairmont. And so now all 3 of us are using this same format for large scale projects. And when we talk about these events, you know, each of them annually raise over $80,000 a piece yearly for our United Ways, which is a phenomenal fundraiser for us. Margaret is the dancing queen. That is for real. You should have seen her beautiful dress that she had on that night.
Christina may have been to a Dancing with the Stars or 2, and she has experience in that.
But this is the prime example of a fun event. It's something people want to come to. It's something they look forward to. And so that's something that I really have always believed in fundraising, is find a couple signature events that you can hang your hat on and go with those. By burning yourself out on 50 small, tiny events that you're just doing over and over, you're going to burn yourself out and you're going to burn your volunteers out. And so if you can find really signature events that are yours and that you can make people look forward to every year, that's going to be such a higher return for you in the end, as far as staff motivation, volunteer motivation, and hopefully proceeds, because just in the long run, I think it's better for you. And so this is one of ours that's a signature event that we just love to do. And it's just a lot of fun. Margaret, what do you want to add about?
I would just say it brings in new revenue every year. And so the things that I would mention is, if you're trying to start a signature event or you already have one and you're just trying to expand it or grow it, for us, we wanted to make sure we were in a season of time that it wasn't on top of another big event. And so, you know, when you settle in on what that looks like, it took us about a year here in Charleston to figure out where other organizations were already having significant fundraisers or galas, and we wanted to make sure we weren't stepping on any toes. And so find that date that kind of works for you and your community, and then know your community. So, you know, the other thing we do is Inside the Huddle with Tony Caridi. Well, people love to hear about the Mountaineers. And so we gather a completely different audience for that event than we do for Dancing with the Stars for the most part. So I think it's important to touch different pockets of your community in a couple of different fundraisers. But Brett's exactly right. You can wear staff out in a hurry, trying to do multiple events over a year's time and burn everybody out and nobody has a good time. So if you can settle on a couple, 2 or 3 things that make your budget work, that you can really focus your team and your community on, it's usually a little easier for your staff, and the community gets used to it. So we try to keep all those events at the same time of year. And so people start to, in Beckley, people call in January and say, when's Dancing with the Stars in September? Because we don't want to miss it. We want to plan around it. And so that's when you've kind of built an event that's time stamped and people know what to expect, and they start to plan their events around that as well. So look outside the box a little bit for something that may be a little different in your community, and then try not to step on the toes of others who are already working really hard to establish an event. And track your money. Like, we know Dancing with the Stars brought us about 70% new money this year, new donors to our United Way. And so now it's up to us to really focus on them and cement them as supporters of our work. Stay in touch with them, make sure they feel valued, got good thank yous for being at the event. And then we know that'll change every year because our dancers change every year. So when you look at those events, it's important, I think, to track, what your new money is and how you can keep those new donors.
And then our last piece is turn your volunteers into donors. And so this is one that's really important for us, for both of us having our Day of Caring and Day of Action. And several of your agencies probably participate in our Days of Actions and Days of Caring and things. And so this is one where, again, the record keeping plays really into this, is that you should be tracking who your volunteers are. And so hopefully you're already doing that for Volunteer West Virginia and for other mechanisms, but then don't forget that they could also be donors. Turning them into donors is also helping them understand how the volunteer work that they did at your agency translates into the money that you need to raise for your programming. And so that's something we tell all of the agencies when they're having these projects, is that you're going to have a captive audience of people at your agency working with you and learning about you. And so turn them into donors for you. Make them understand your story and make sure they understand how their volunteer work supports the money that you also have to raise, and how both are important to you, because none of us could exist without volunteers and money. And so you need both of them. And really, a lot of the times those volunteers maybe don't give because they never were asked, because that's one of the most important pieces of all fundraisers and fundraising, is if you don't ask, they won't give. And so if you have to make the ask, and we sometimes forget about that. We just assume that people are there to volunteer, and so we assume that they know that we want them to give. You need to ask them, and if you don't, sometimes then it's our fault that they don't give, is because we never did that. And so these volunteer projects and really engaging volunteers and making sure that you're doing that is really critical. And like Christine said, it's not as scary as it seems. Really, it really does. Certainly for Margaret and I, this is our everyday jobs. And so we're used to this now, fundraising. But for any nonprofit, we couldn't exist without these. And helping them understand that story and asking for money certainly gets easier with time. But when you have a really good program and you have a really good story behind it, it makes it a lot easier to ask for the money.
Yeah, and Barbara's right. Sometimes people do give of their time or their talent when they don't have treasure. But I will tell you, I feel strongly that if you really believe in what I'm doing, $1 works for me, because treasure counts too. And so I absolutely agree with that. But I also think, there's value in that dollar and having a dog in the fight, if you will. The other thing I'll mention is volunteers turn into donors. They can also turn into board members if you're in search of good board members and you're really paying attention. And no matter what your event, you got to tell your story. At some point in there, people have to know why you're doing what you're doing. And so when we were talking about Dancing with the Stars, we had a piece every week about why we dance, so we wanted our dancers to be reminded that they were putting shoes on kids' feet, or they were buying food for people, or they were making sure after school programs existed. And then the night of, the biggest compliment Brett could have possibly given me is the next day he said it was clear it was a United Way event. And so that's what mattered we want everybody to have a good time. We want the dancers to be successful, all that. But at the end of the day, they had to know why they were there and why they were spending money, and what we were then in turn going to very wisely use their donor dollar to do and support in the communities they live in. So, we're strong, give where you live. So we talk about that a lot. And we also want people to know where their money's going. So tell your story, tell it briefly sometimes. Those folks that weren't there to have a big old sob story about the United Way, but they clearly needed to understand where their donor dollar was going and how much we valued that donor dollar for the work that we do. So make sure you tell your story and that people have a chance to know why they're giving.
Margaret and I are not always great at the briefly thing.
Very rarely.
Very rarely. But there's just a few of our tips for you guys.
Yep. Happy to answer any questions.
Well, thank you. I think you all were so brief, and you put so many good tips in that presentation between the two of you. And I love how you all work together to make Dancing with the Stars possible in your own respective communities. And it just really goes to show. And we really appreciate it. You all work so hard at what you do. And thank you so much for sharing your tips with us. All right, so we have time for one last panelist. We have Christina. This is an interesting perspective. So we've heard from two organizations, and now we're going to hear from a volunteer extraordinaire who organizes fundraisers for her animal shelter in Summers County. So Christina's going to share a little bit about what she does at the Summers County Humane Society.
Thanks, Dana. So what makes my volunteer position and my organization that I volunteer with unique, maybe not as unique as a lot of people think in West Virginia, is that we have 0 paid staff. We have no paid staff. We are a completely volunteer-run organization, volunteer board, volunteers do everything. We don't even have a physical location or animal shelter in Summers County. So as you can imagine, that makes things challenging, and we have to be creative, and every dollar that we make has to be used very strategically so that we can maximize the impact that we're going to be able to make in the community. So I talked a little bit, or Dana talked a little bit about the Prettiest Pet Contest idea. And this is something that we have done in Summers County for several years, and it is successful. I am proud to announce that my dog Shiloh, who is the little black boxer mix pictured, was one of the winners of the Prettiest Pet Contest in Summers County this year. And I took it quite seriously. And I think that is why this fundraiser was successful for us. We were able to raise close to $2,000 through this fundraiser. Again, that is, like Margaret suggested, the net. So that is what we raised after all the fees and everything else were taken out. One of the ways that we made this successful was to create different categories for the pets. So we had prettiest senior pet, prettiest dog, prettiest cat, prettiest exotic pet. You can see in the middle, there's a chicken here that was submitted by the Summers County FFA. And all of the kids in FFA at Summers County High School rallied around this chicken, and they each donated $5, $10 to make that chicken best in show. I believe its name was Little C. But by creating multiple categories for people to enter to, we really just expanded the types of people that would enter their pets. This was a completely online fundraiser. We, like Dana said, we'll send out the link with the slides, but we used a website called Go Photo Contest, where myself, as someone who was entering my dog, I just went onto this website, uploaded her photo, put a little bio about why people should vote for her. And I think I had to pay a $5 entry fee. And then I just shared that link with all of my friends and family. And I think the competitive aspect, similarly to Dancing with the Stars, makes it so successful. Some people might not really care about the Humane Society, but they care about me. So they're going to donate $10 because I asked them to for my dog. Some people might, it's hard to believe, but might not care about things that the United Way does, but they care about their friend. So they're going to donate money for their team. So if you can maximize a competition of some sort in your fundraiser, it can really snowball and people can really get excited about it. especially when there's cute pets involved. So I highly encourage anyone who is in a community where this hasn't happened before to take a look at it. It's pretty simple and pretty easy, and you can always reach out to me with any questions. And the other fundraiser that I briefly mentioned in the tips segment of our meeting today was the Meet the Candidates Forum. This was totally outside of our comfort zone as an organization, but one of our board members brought it up. They said, hey, I used to live in North Carolina. My Rotary Club did this Meet the Candidates, and it was really successful. And we got to thinking that that really did not exist in our community and could be successful. So we identified a gap that nobody was doing and decided to just take it and run with it. We did this in early April, so before the primaries, but I think it would be even more successful in November when all the ads are running and things are getting down to the wire and people are really interested in the elections. So we went to the courthouse, we got the official document that had everyone that was running for an elected position that would be represented in Summers County. So all the way from, you know, US Congress people to school board, and sent them a letter in the mail inviting them to be a part of our organization, letting them know how to RSVP and all the details for the event. And we were expecting not much, to be honest. We didn't think a lot of people would want to participate, but we ended up having close to 30 candidates come out. One of them was the candidate for the US Congress seat, which was really impressive to us. And sometimes those local elections can be some of the most heated. We had almost all of our county commissioner candidates come out and almost all of our school board candidates come out. One thing that made this event really successful was having multiple streams of income tied into one event. So we had the candidates paying a donation in order to participate. We had a silent auction going on with donated goods. And we had a baked goods auction happening all at the same time. I will admit that I was skeptical of the baked goods auction because I just didn't see how people bidding against each other on cakes or pies was going to raise money. But this was the perfect event for a live auction format, which we did in the intermissions, like between candidates, because you would have county commissioner candidate number 1 and county commissioner candidate number 2 who got into a bidding war to see who would be the most generous and give the most dollars to support a good cause in their community. So we ended up having some cakes sell for over $200. So we had cinnamon rolls selling for that type too. So again, that kind of like competitive, healthy competition really worked in our favor with this event. And it was great that we were able to have, you know, income donations flowing from multiple directions. So those are some more details about those events that I mentioned. We were going to have one more special guest today, but Carrie could not make it.
So it was so awesome to hear from everyone today. You all did such a great job, and there were so many good ideas. So we just want to take a second to hear your answers in the chat box. What was one tip from today that you plan to use? So it could be from making a budget, like what Margaret Ann O'Neill said, or creating a signature event, having a baked good auction, signing up for Canva. There are so many good walkaway tips from today. So go ahead and put your answer in the chat box. I'd be curious to see what sticks. And then we're just going to wrap up with a few questions at the end while your answers come in. So as we wrap up, it's cool. I see a lot of different answers from different people, and it sounds like everyone's trying something new, which leads me to believe that today's webinar was a success. So, and I think we had fun. I think we succeeded, Christina, in making fundraising fun. So if you have any questions, go ahead, paste them in the chat and your comments. We'd love to see those too. And we'll take a moment to answer any questions you might have for panelists or for Christina and myself. And then we're just going to close out by pasting a feedback survey in the chat box. Be sure to copy that so you can take it after we're finished today. So let's just take about 1 more minute to take in all our glowing feedback and see if anyone has any questions. Let's see, Steve asked if this webinar is recorded. It will be, and Christina will be sending it out with the slides. And hello to everyone who's watching this as a recorded webinar. So.
Yep, I'll get that out sometime tomorrow, Steve, so you can refer back to it. Let's see, we have a question from Katie about the best ways to solicit donations, especially donations of items from all across the state instead of one area. That is tough. What do you think, Dana, or any of our panelists?
Yeah, I'd love to hear Margaret Ann, Brett, Whitney, if you all have any good tidbits on this.
I'll just say quickly, it's Margaret. So West Virginia State Parks will often offer you certificates for getaways a night here and there, but they only do it, I think, every 2 years. So for those kinds of things, you just really have to plan ahead. I think Adventures on the Gorge is usually really good about sharing things. Sometimes people have luck with the Greenbrier. I have not. Golf courses will sometimes do like a foursome or something from their gift shop. For me, the key has been just asking ahead of time. Most of those kinds of requests have to be done through their websites, and they have to be done far enough in advance for them to get you. And as an aside, sometimes the Lottery Commission will also do lottery tickets for like a silent auction or some kind of giveaway, but it's a time factor for those kinds of things. Has been my what we have found, but it is really good to look across the state for things that are popular that people would want to bid on.
Yeah, that's what I would say too, is tourism things are huge, obviously, from a lot of the tourism areas, and also from, West Virginia crafters and things, from Tamarack, from Blinko Glass, from, some of those kinds of companies are really great just because they work statewide, and they obviously have a statewide presence. Another neat thing for West Virginia is because we don't have any professional sports teams, a lot of the Pittsburgh teams also are always willing to donate. So Pirates tickets, Steelers tickets, those things, because we don't have any professional teams here. So that's always something that usually is a good draw for, silent auctions and those kinds of things.
Those are good tips. I think, Katie, you may have already done this before, but if you go to like major corporations' websites, sometimes you scroll to the bottom and they have like a give back button. And like Margaret said, a lot of these bigger corporations, you do have to go through their website. But if you do have a local branch nearby you, sometimes if you can just like get a little bit of FaceTime with one person, that's going to like advocate for you and follow up with the appropriate people. I know once I was doing a fundraiser and looking for a prize, and I went to Grand Home Furnishings in Princeton and talked to the guy there, and he donated a recliner for me to use as a prize. When I had called, that did not happen. I never could speak to the right person, but I just walked in and asked to speak to the manager and let him know, led with my cause, and then asked, like, is there any way you guys can contribute? And we landed on a recliner. And I was like, well, that'll work. So any other questions before we sign off for the day? I'm not seeing any. So I guess, Dana, we've done a great job.
We did. It was a really fun webinar, and we want to thank you all, and thank you to all our special guests and our panelists today.
Awesome. We'll hope to see you guys next month at our June Volunteer West Virginia Wednesday. Everybody have a good rest of your afternoon, and we'll see you later. Bye.